Hello friends of PowerHouse Bakery and all my favorite divas and dudes out there. I'm so glad that I have you here, and we are starting a new year, 30 days of healthy, and I want to show you some of the science around inflammation and what that all means, because really when we're looking at answering the question of what is healthy, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. So I'm Suzanne Parker, and I'm the founder and CEO of this funky little bakery we call PowerHouse Bakery. And what we do here is we love to meet people where they are and help them understand where they're going with their health journey, and if we can help give them information and make their journey easier and a better success, then that's what we hope to accomplish every time we meet somebody new. And really the whole idea of the new year and trying to start a new healthy plan is something that all of us kind of hope to achieve for the year. And so when I used to work in the fitness industry, we always knew that the health club was going to be packed in January and February, and then in March it got a little bit less, and then by April, May, June it started to dwindle, and then we'd see a little bit of a rise in the summer because everybody wanted to wear their bikinis, and they realized, oh no, I don't like the way I look in my bikini, and then they want to start at the gym again. So really, with this 30 Days of Healthy, my hope is that we can really teach you about how to understand what your body needs to be the healthiest it can be. And we know that when we are following a healthy plan, we are able to fight off viruses and bacteria better. We're building our immune system, so we are able to stay healthier, and we don't need as many medicines, which of course is what we want. And truly, God has given us an amazing body that can fight off the environmental toxins pretty well. And so my hope in the midst of this crazy virus that we've had to deal with in 2020 has really given us an opportunity to understand how do we take our health in the driver's seat and really understand how can we make an impact on our health in a really profound way. And it's not just about looking great, although we all want to look the very best we can, but we also want to understand how do we feel great, how do we keep our body functioning optimally. And of course, not only our immune system is important, but also our brain function, our cardiovascular system, our heart and lungs. And so making sure that our organ systems are getting all the nutrients that they need, as well as making sure that we are strong and able to fight off environmental toxins. So today I want to talk with you a little bit about what I mean by toxins. So when we think of toxins, we think of chemicals, right? So we open up the cabinet under the sink and we see all those toxic chemicals. But of course it's a little more than that. We know to stay away from chemicals, and we wouldn't want to ingest something that says is dangerous. But it's a lot more nebulous when we look at the food world. We know that there are certain foods that are going to be toxic to our bodies. We also know that sometimes just the environment's air, so we'll say environment. So we know that certain foods are going to be toxic to some people, and other people can eat them and it doesn't cause a trouble at all. So I want to be able to look at that. And if I had a new customer come into PowerHouse Bakery and they were trying to build their immune system, I would tell them that we always want to build our plan based on symptoms. So if we know that you have certain symptoms, well, we're going to attack those at first. So if you have something that is a lifestyle disease, we'll call it, we're going to want to attack that first. And sometimes the toxins that are pertinent become really different if you already have something going on in your body. So say you have something like diabetes, or you have a history of cancer. Now we know that the toxins have a different profile. And so I want to look at that a little bit. Say you have a food allergy. So a food allergy is not really a disease, but it is your body overreacting to something that other people don't have a problem with. Big difference in, say, we're eating sugars. A diabetic can eat sugars, a small amount, and not have a bad reaction. But those of us that don't have diabetes don't have a bad reaction at all. So I really want us to understand the nuances. If you already have some pre-existing conditions, those toxins will have a different profile. But in general, let's look at some of the typical foods that we know can cause trouble in our body. And what I mean by trouble is allowing the immune system to not run at its very best, or our cardiovascular system, or of course our heart and lung, and so on. But for sure, we know that volume of any food can be trouble. So just like that diabetic, if they overeat on sugar, they have a rise in their blood sugar. And if somebody is diabetic, that means that their pancreas is not making enough insulin to really manage that sugars. So of course, having a lot of sugars in their system is definitely a problem. So volume, whether you have diabetes or not, is always going to have an impact on the foods that we have, and would they be toxic or not. So let's look at that with sugar. So we know that sugar can be a toxin in Fulbright form if you have diabetes. For all of us, too much sugar becomes a toxin. So I want us to really see that variation. Now, there's other foods that fall in that same category. So if we think of food allergies, here's another situation where it's a pre-existing condition because our body is extra sensitive to certain foods. Eggs can be a toxin to some people. Dairy can be a toxin to some people. Even soy and peanuts, and of course other nuts. So here what I've outlined are the big allergy foods, the typical foods that people will right off the bat take out if they're having a symptom. So again, if I have a new customer come in and they're not feeling good, there's that symptom. And then I would say, well, let's look at your diet and see if there's some toxins or some foods that we should take out different than volume. Because remember, we know that there's certain foods like sugars and fats that a small amount probably wouldn't be a problem. But if you have an allergy to a food, that could definitely be more of a severe problem. So let's keep going. So now what I've talked about is if you have a pre-existing condition, it makes a difference in what foods are toxic or not. If you have a food allergy, that kind of means that your body is overreacting to a typical food, and that's what's causing the reaction. Quickly to touch on environmental. We know that some people will have environmental allergies. So very similar. You can have some pollen have a little bit of an effect, a lot of pollen, a big effect, right? Versus an allergy to food like egg or even gluten, have a very small amount and have a big reaction. So what I'm kind of talking about now is when we see toxins, there's varying degrees of a reaction. So inflammation. So inflammation is our body's response to the toxin. So whether it be a small grade or a big effect, in general, a toxin is going to be an environment or a food or some kind of assault to our body, and our body responds. So inflammation is a very healthy approach. Our body says, okay, we don't like that critter. We're going to encapsulate it. We're going to bring in all the immune cells. So I call them the white soldiers when my boys are growing up. So inflammation is really when the blood carries all of the white soldiers, so all the immune cells, to the area where it's trying to fight. So blood cells and lots of other things. So the immunoglobulins, the IgA, the IgG, lots of different immune cells. So when we're thinking of taking a virus and we want to be able to fight against it, if we have an immune system that has been taught to be ready to fight against that, it's going to have these cells that are already ready to go, that remember that foreign invader and is able to attack it, encapsulate it, and get it out of the body. So it's pretty cool. So basically, inflammation is a really vague term. It means our body's response to a toxin. It could be from the environment. It could be a virus that's foreign, that's crazy bad, and our body's really good at responding, getting the blood full of all the important chemicals and cells, and it attacks that cell that we want to get rid of. So in general, inflammation is a smart thing. But now let's go back to the whole idea of an allergy. it's like our body overreacts. It's like, come on, pollen is not that bad. It doesn't have to give me what do you call it, the fever, the pollen fever, where we really have a strong reaction. So sometimes inflammation can be overdone. So when we see inflammation that becomes now a problem, it's because it's chronic. So if a diabetic chronically has high blood sugar, it causes now a cascade of events in the body that now inflammation becomes a bad situation because it's chronic, and it becomes now more of a problem than the body can really manage. And so when we think about a healthy diet, how do we help build our system so we have a strong immune system and it's able to overcome a toxin but not go into this whole cascade of chronic and long-term inflammation? Doctors and scientists are still really trying to figure out, why does our body overreact? We know that there's foods that certainly cause a problem if we eat too many of them. But we also know that for some reason our body has a sickness that constantly causes inflammation. So that's what I want to look at a little bit. When we think of our body's symptoms of inflammation, there's kind of a group of symptoms that we know of. Something that causes swelling, so joint pain. We also can think of just, constant headache, or even migraines can be related to chronic inflammation. Thinking about irritable bowel disease. So when we know that our body has a lot of immune cells that are built in our immune system, if we have chronic inflammation, we see a lot of problems in the gut. And so again, chronic problem just means that it's ongoing, and now we've got to train our body to be able to heal from that chronic inflammation. And I'm getting to how we're going to do that with healthy foods. Another one that's similar to irritable bowel disease is GERD. You might have heard that term, and that's basically when you have reflux, you have pain sometimes right around the upper abdominal region, and it's hard to identify, but that's because we've got inflammation, perhaps from overeating or perhaps from some foods having difficulty with digestion. So these are the body's symptoms. How do we look at now a healthy diet that'll help us minimize chronic inflammation? We know that there are some foods that are anti-inflammatory foods. And if you see my table here, you've got this beautiful bright yellow color, and I am going to show you how to make one of our most popular drinks here at PowerHouse Bakery. So the anti-inflammatory foods are quite a wide variety. If you've ever worked with me before, you know that I'm a big advocate of the Mediterranean diet. And one of the big proponents of the Mediterranean diet is the anti-cancer book that I've talked on before. And so Dr. David Shriver really believes in the Mediterranean diet because it focuses on bright colors. If we were to create that diet pyramid, let me show you that as I'm building my moon milk. I showed you this in a previous video, I'm sure. When we think of a pyramid, where is the majority of our calories coming from? And right here are bright colors. Bright colors coming from, you guessed it, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds. Up here, very small amount are going to be sweets. One thing that's really traditional in a Mediterranean eating style is things are made from scratch more often. The American diet has a lot of processing going on. So when you see a Mediterranean diet and we're looking at bright colors and sweets are part of still the pyramid, albeit a small amount, and even meats and maybe a tiny bit of eggs, occasionally some dairy out here, and poultry. What the other really popular one, of course, is fish, and then olive oil. But in the American diet, this is a little different. What we end up seeing a lot more of is vegetable oils, not just olive oil. And we see processed foods. So the difference is, in American diet, we still do some in this base, but instead of having raw fruits and vegetables and goodies made from scratch, we see processed foods. So now we have a lot more chemicals, which of course lead to those toxins. So that's something that I think is important to understand, is when we look at a Mediterranean eating style, the foods are not that different. In America, we still talk about importance of fruits and veggies, but we lose the messaging when we think convenience, fast, easy, processed. And that's really where we start seeing some potential risk of those toxins. Mediterranean, bright colors, foods from the earth, and even if it's a little bit of sugar, it's again not going to be highly processed. So let me go back to this beautiful moon milk. So my recipe is going to be using hemp milk, which I think is fantastic. The front of pack labeling gives us some really good information. It's going to be rich in omega-3s and 6s, calcium, vitamin B12 and D. Of course, it says gluten and soy-free. Excuse me. And extra vitamin D added. Always a good thing to have a little extra vitamin D. Notice also that it has a non-GMO and verified organic. So I think that's a good thing. If you've ever heard my talks on organics, what's I think valuable is, just like in the Mediterranean style of eating, what we want to make sure we do is avoid toxins that are in the environment. When we do farming practices in the United States, and our goal, our mindset is how do we get the most production for the least amount of money, toxins will go into that soil. The fertilizers and the pesticides are really something that adds to that limit or that amount of toxins that we have exposure to. And so when we look at something that's organic, then they have a very strict requirement of what kinds of things can go into the soil to augment the growth of those plants. And again, if we can use some good antioxidants to help those plants grow, that's a plus, versus having the chemicals that are potential toxins that again can cause our body to fall into that cascade of inflammation and not allowing our immune system to work so well. So I like the fact that this is a great product. And if we look in the ingredient list, it's going to be made with hemp milk. It's a nut that's been cooked and processed. It does have some sugar added, but fortunately not too much. Brown rice syrup, sunflower, lecithin, palmitate, and there's our added vitamins. So it's a pretty darn good one. If we wanted to decrease the sugar even more, we could get unsweetened. For this particular drink though, I do like to add a little bit of the sweetness, and I only add it from what's been added to the original milk. So I promise you it's still not very much sugar. And what I'm going to add to it is some turmeric. So I'm just adding in plain turmeric. I also sometimes will add some of my curried up spice, which is going to add some of the sweet spices. So allspice, a little bit of ginger, coriander, and cloves. This one though, I'm just going to keep it with turmeric. It's a really light flavor and the aroma is amazing. Turmeric, the chemical term is called curcumin. And I love to talk about curcumin because it is loaded with anti-inflammatories. And so this beautiful drink is such an easy way to get a big dose of anti-inflammatories. It's so beautiful and it's very easy to make. Again, you can add a little more sweetness if you want. You can leave this in your fridge and it's a great little drink. It's pretty organic looking and pretty exotic looking too, right, with that bright color. But again, you can add other flavors if you wanted. I've added cinnamon and nutmeg, all kinds of great flavors. The hemp milk is very neutral in flavor. It's got a light nuttiness, kind of like almond milk. And I think what's so nice about it is that it's very high in these omegas. Something also to keep in mind is the typical American diet is awfully high in certain kinds of fats. We want to always increase our omega-3s. Now notice in this particular milk, it's saying 3s and 6s. Now, if we look at plant fats, we oftentimes think of omega-6s. But what's unique about this product is it has one of the omega-6s that isn't commonly found in corn oil and other vegetable oils, which we have been told we want to decrease in our diet. So we know that to make sure we have a healthy immune system, we want to get omegas, and we want to get some of the special omega-6s, linoleic acid, acid as well as the alpha-linolenic. And that's the one that's available in hemp milk. And you know me, I love the mighty seeds, which are also the same thing, very rich in the omega-3s. So when we think of an anti-inflammatory list of foods, we know for sure we want to include omega-3s. We know we want to add curcumin. So bright colors is all you have to remember, or you could say turmeric. Other bright colors, what would they be? Well, all of the leafy greens. If you've ever heard me talk about the ORC value, the oxidative reactive absorbency capacity, fancy term for how nutrient rich is a food. In general, go with the bright colors. So spinach, of course, blueberries, my favorite, raspberries. So notice here that I'm getting all the colors hit. I've got bright yellow, I've got bright green, I've got blues and reds. That is the trick. Every chance you get, I want you to increase the foods that you have every day in using those bright colors. So again, the Mediterranean pyramid gives us the principles. It talks about olive oil, which is a great source of omega-3s. It talks about fish, which is a great source of omega-3s. It really downplays sugar. It puts it way up at the top alongside meats. So again, trying to improve the fats in our blood, more omegas and less saturated fat is really advantageous, and it's promoted by that Mediterranean diet by helping us see that probably beef is something we should use very infrequently. And what I mean by that, well, maybe a 4-ounce serving once a month. I know that seems crazy low if you're a meat lover, but you could do it more frequently with a little bit less. So think of using meat as a flavor enhancement of a meal. You could add it like a stir fry, and you have 2 cups of broccoli and maybe 2 cups of carrots and butternut squash, and you do a saute and you add in just a few slices of a really good quality meat. That would be an excellent way of getting all the bright colors, a little bit of your favorite meat, and still be really getting some anti-inflammatories. Ginger is another great one. I have this great little tea here that I love to use, and it's called a detox tea, but in general, it's just a caffeine-free herbal tea. Great way to add some of those anti-inflammatories. And not to mention, one thing that's so important about that Mediterranean pyramid is, yes, we talk about sweets and beef being at the very top, and down here, bright colors. One thing that the Mediterranean style of just the culture and the people together is that they really have a lot of time where they spend together, family traditions and family meals. And so now with us being home a lot more, I hope that you're able to have more of a relaxed, enjoyable time with family eating food, because I promise that is a really powerful way to have an anti-inflammatory way of life, is to be able to have some joy and have ways to de-stress. Of course, better sleep is also really important. But in general, when we think about an anti-inflammatory diet, we want to go with bright colors, and we want to make sure that we eat more from the earth. And so I hope that helps you. And next time you're ready for a fun beverage, come check us out and have some moon milk with us. So keep checking us out on our Facebook. I'm going to be showing the 30 Days of Healthy pretty often. I'll be doing new recipes every week on that Facebook page. So I hope that helps you, and come see me sometime soon at PowerHouse Bakery. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.